on your wonderful yeah. We should check now, just before we start, the new album available online on your website.
Yeah.
We put a link to that.
That's right, yeah, you can just go in on the website and you can click into it.
Yeah.
There's a page, I can't remember.
Sure.
Title,
well, I'll go directly to it as a link and yeah. So I would think...
It's also available on CD Baby, so...
Oh, there you go. I'll link that too as well, just so people know.
As well, you can download from iTunes and Spotify or whatever.
There you go. Now, I will say that you're a busy man. Like last Friday you're in Leeson Lounge, then you're in Jack's Music Club on the Saturday. Yeah. I would think for someone of your kind of background, live is really the most beautiful place. Like, you must feel like that's when you're home.
Well, it's kind of gone full circle, I mean, I've been in the business quite a long time, and it's in the early days. I mean, recording was the big thing. Selling records, you could become a millionaire. If you played it right and you wrote the right songs. We all know the history.
Yeah.
But it's kind of come full circle now, where, as you know, like the downloads and everything have kind of killed off that side of the sales. So it's down to playing live, and which bands always did anyway. But it's kind of a necessary thing now.
But this is like. It's like pre-Heartbreak Hotel. Like Heartbreak Hotel becomes the first million-selling record, because up till then it was the publishing rights were the big thing, and live was the where people earned the money. And in those early days, Elvis and Jerry Lee and all that still earned the bulk of their money going out and doing tours.
Sure,
and it's kind of returned to that. The internet is like the radio of that day, where your song was played and that people just heard it and that was enough. They didn't. It was only in the 50s that people started physically buying records in big numbers. So we've almost returned to that pre-rock and roll era, where it's the live is the experience. You get your music out there somehow, and hopefully they like it and they go and see you.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'd even go back further. I mean, to the sort of 30s and 40s. That's when sort of sales really started to take off, big time. But like, it's kind of gone back to medieval times almost. Like, bands are like wandering minstrels on the internet instead of the highways of Europe or whatever. Selling their wares and everything. So it's kind of gone back to that in a way. But that's fine. I mean, playing live to me is the main thing.
Right.
Even in the studio, we cut our tracks live.
Right.
There's there's very little overdubbing.
Well, I know there's a lot of Neil Young, Bruce Springsteen, but obviously that Sun sort of studios experience where it is just the moment captured, as opposed to another layer, and then We should say that you were 5 when your dad, who was a musician, kind of sent you to piano lessons. You were a little bit reluctant, but then you had a road to Damascus moment when you heard Elmore James and others. Can you remember that sort of feeling that this is?
Yeah, I can. I mean, there's a few moments. I mean, my Dad had a 78 of Boogie Woogie Man by Albert Ammons and Pete Johnson. And that was kind of a real awakening. Another time I was listening to the radio, I don't know if you remember a guy called Mike Vernon. He used to have a show on the radio, and I heard a Lightning Hopkins track, which really kind of inspired me. And then Elmore James, although I don't play guitar, his voice and he's just the way he approaches the blues is fantastic.
And those, I mean, I'm amazed now. There you are, age 12. You get into this whole new kind of rhythm and blues, and it completely opens up a new world to you, and it's a thrill. But then by 16, you're gigging professionally. You're doing, 6 nights a week, 5 hours a night. You're doing the nightclub circuit in Southampton. And at 16, that's pretty spectacular, because it's a big demand on any musician to sort of
Well, you could do that in those days. Like there were things. Like in the UK, we had residencies. I mean, it was more the show band thing in Ireland, where people travelled around did different nights. But in the UK, they had more residency bands, what they call palais bands. And there'd be a dance hall in every town, and or main city, and there would be a couple of bands playing every night, and a DJ, and there was loads and loads of work in clubs, pubs, everything. It was all manpower in those days.
Kind of joyful, really, because there's nothing like being in a room with people are creating anything, like whether it's music or just that feeling. We're all in this together. It's like a coach trip. You're going off on a journey together, and with the right night, with the right sound system, with the right it's just such a kickoff. And I'd imagine you've had that a million times in your life, because we'll go into it more. But from all your session years, and you've played with. Everyone from Finbar Fury to Van, Shakin' Stevens. You've had a wonderful run of all sorts of musicians, but really that core of just a bunch of people in a room getting that feeling and that lightning in a bottle thing. It must. I'm just guessing that you've had a lot of happy nights in your life.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's been some big moments. I mean, I mean, you kind of get a bit bogged down in a residency. Like after a few months, it gets a bit like a job. But I used to move on every sort of, say, 4 or 5 months or whatever. I kind of learned the gig, you get into it, and then you sort of started to become a bit boring, you know, after sort of having done it sort of 6 nights a week for 5 months or whatever. But then I formed a band with a guy called John Marson, Lou Edmonds, and another guy called Glyn Havard, and it was called The Edge in the UK.
And of course, two of them were from The Damned, which was, you know, they obviously, you know, were deep in the industry. They knew what they were doing, and this is the Stiff Records connection that comes into your life then in a big way.
Like we tried to sort of crack the scene, which we did to a certain amount, but we didn't sort of make it really big time, and it split up. I mean, I was kind of more into the rock and roll side, and it was just pulling apart. I mean, John Master was more into the commercial thing, which he ended up doing Culture Club, and which was a big success for him, which was great. But there was a producer there called Liam Sternberg at Stiff, and he used us for quite a lot of sessions, and one of them was a Kirsty MacColl track called They Don't Know.
Nice.
And I got to meet Kirsty then, and went on to making an album with her, which one of the tracks was that single, There's a Guy Down the Chip Shop. Where's his Elvis? And she did a tour on the back of that, and we came to Ireland, and I met my wife, and that's why I'm here, basically. So you know. And,
but those kind of, you know, when you lucky enough, we say, to do what you love all the way through your life. I mean, did it ever? Because it is a tough life, acting and music and all that. The arts are tough because there's no 9 to 5 guarantees about your end of week wages and all that. I mean, were there times when you had to walk away for a while, or were there times when you thought about walking away for a while?
I did, yeah. I've done other jobs. I've driven cabs. You know, I worked in a brewery for a while, microbrewery. I had designs on getting a brew pub at one point over here, but that was before it all took off. This was about 15 years ago, you know. But it was just when property sort of boomed, you know, and I just couldn't afford to do it. It kind of got beyond. So I was always playing as well, you know, but my kids were going through college, and like I had to sort of try and, you know, get some extra money and, you know, keep the thing rolling. My wife was working as well, so it's just you know, one of those necessary things. And I mean, it was handy enough to do, like driving a cab. You can do it when you want, you know, and stuff like that. So I could work around what I was doing musically as well. But it was one of those periods where nothing was really kind of happening for me, you know. And it was after I'd been with like the Shakin' Stevens thing and Van Morrison, and then I just had a period of that when, you know, as I say, when my kids were in college, and I just need to make sure I have some bucks coming through the door.
I need a sensible income as opposed to just hopefully
payback time.
Now we should say that you've kind of, you know, experienced the whole full beautiful gauntlet of how, you know, rock and roll has evolved. Like you know, that when you mentioned Boogie Woogie Man, that's like, that was a '78. You're saying your dad's collection. Right to now, we live in a time where people just have music on their phone. They don't even physically hold anything. So it's an incredible kind of journey, because you know, the music you're playing is so deeply rooted in the DNA of all great music, really. You know, because that it all is the same thing. I always think that Ray Charles has either got soul or it hasn't. It doesn't really matter if it's country or if it's, you know, blues or whatever it might be. But that must be quite thrilling. But I don't know if you feel optimistic about music, whether you know, the fact that it is kind of returning to those, as you say, the 30s and 40s, that sort of roots thing of, you know, it's about the live gig. It's about, you know, I don't know if that sort of makes you feel, well, that's where I kind of always wanted to be. So it's, you know.
Yeah, it's well, it's, as you say, it's come full circle, and there's I mean, it's all dependent on what people want, and at the moment there's a big surge of people wanting to go out and dance and listen to live music that way, especially in Europe. France is a big sort of swing rock and roll thing going at the moment, which is great for us. And so it's healthy that way. What it, you know, in another 10 years' time, I don't know, but you know, people actually do want to go out and meet each other. You know, and you know, it's, I think people get to the point where they do get fed up. You know, just watching Sky Sports and getting in a takeaway dinner and a bottle of wine. You know, so. You know, there is a world out there,
there
folks.
You go. There's 3D where you can actually touch people and talk to them and
exactly,
you know, interact and because that Netflix and chill generation that we've all got big feck off tellies and we can buy booze for, you can get a week's booze for €5. So
see, the strange thing is in the music business, nothing ever sort of finishes. Like in the early days, there was vaudeville. and in theatre, and that never really died. You know, you still have cabaret and whatever.
Yeah.
You know, radio. I mean, television didn't kill radio. You know, the internet didn't kill television.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It all kind of stays on to a certain extent. So you know, cinema hasn't sort of died. You know?
Yeah.
So,
and I think people are nostalgic even for eras they weren't around in. So there's always going to be this love for the origins of whatever you happen to like, cinema or movies or whatever. There's always going to be those who are passionate right down to the core, right down to the roots of it, and that's endless. You know, you could go on, you know, a full 100 years before you even get to listen to all the great music that's been bouncing around. And now we should finish with we are playing here on the Saturday, the 6th of October. We'll have a link to that. But we'll finish with a little piece. I know that it'd be kind of. I know you've written a piece just for me because you know you felt that here you were coming this morning. You should write maybe something. Now you're given a different name, of course, and you know we'll pretend it's an old song, but. But yeah, we'll finish with a piece.
Yeah. Okay.
Magic.
I'll do some boogie woogie for you.
Great. That was good.